imagine what would happen if Wargaming just decided they were going to go full weird. And of course, today we are looking at the Asterion, the medium that is a heavy that is more like a medium and is essentially a better version of a tank that we already have in the game that is a premium. That is the M48 Ram Panzer. At least by better, I mean you get the advantage of having a cosmetic item that technically obscures the view for your opponents from seeing the weak points, and it doesn't count as armor, which is that giant Minotaur on the front of the Asterion, which is the German tier 8 heavy tank. And of course having the gigantic plow as well. And although it is basically the exact same as the Ram Panzer, which I believe we have somewhere, that is technically actually a medium tank, as you can see, the Ram Panzer being this one, which we recently did a review of, but the Asterion is something slightly different, and by slightly different it has upgraded alpha damage over that medium tank and allows you to basically play more like a heavy. And by the looks of things, you have better armor. From what I could gather, maybe it slightly doesn't, I don't know, we can have a look here. But yeah, I mean, armor wise looks similar to what we have, but of course having that obscurity, which is the Minotaur, really being a bit of a distraction for your opponents. And although it doesn't actually act like anything, as I say, with these sorts of skins, much like the Arachnid, yeah, you do get an advantage even if it isn't necessarily a statistical one, because I mean, it's annoying to try and hit that cupola when all you're seeing is this, and it definitely obscures it. So yeah, hopefully Wargaming stop with all of these gigantic cosmetics that look a bit weird and out of place. And if you think that that is something that is actually good about this tank, or that you think is actually not too bad, let me know. But I feel like a lot of people find this sort of thing kind of detracting from what the core game is, and I guess maybe I'm part of it. I don't know. I think it is what it is, and I guess it makes for a cool looking Halloween tank, so maybe it's worth it. But then again, it is kind of annoying. Now we'll talk about some of the key things about this vehicle, because people seem to bounce off of this thing all the time. Now that being said, that gigantic cupola that's on the top of this tank is actually not that weak. I mean, it is weak, 200mm, and most people pen it, but it is not just an auto pen, and so you can actually bounce a few rounds off the cupola, but to be honest with you, most of the time people are going to go through that cupola, because look at the standard penetration of this vehicle, 218. That's more than enough to go through the cupola of this tank, given that it's 200mm thick. But it also has 282mm of penetration on the premium rounds, which are just going to go right the way through that cupola. So it is a big weak point for the majority of this tank. But one of the annoying things, much like we have with the Centurion AVRE, yeah, we have the big kind of plate or scoop or bucket, digger bucket, whatever you want to call it, that I assume back in the day, maybe when they had the Ram Panzer, or even if that was a real thing, I'm sure it probably might have been, given that it was maybe a minesweeper, was to kind of go out and essentially cause the mines to explode so that it doesn't detrack the actual tank, because obviously in real life when you track a tank or detrack a tank, it can't move and it's just going to spin in one direction if one of the tracks is blown off, and so yeah, they don't want that to happen, otherwise your tank is immobilized, you're left out in the open. That's my understanding of it. Of course, I am not a military expert, I play World of Tanks console and of course make YouTube videos on it, but I'm sure some of you might have actually had real world experience of it. It'd be interesting to see whether or not that is a relatively accurate kind of description. But yeah, let me know. I'll be really interested to see what you guys kind of get up to in your careers and stuff like that. As you know, we all play this game. I'm assuming some people are actually actively in the militaries and stuff like that around the world. But I digress, sorry, we're in the tank review section, but most importantly, let's have a look at how we're setting up this tank, because I mean, based off the armor model, it's kind of decent armor wise and people will bounce off of it. But one thing I wanted to get into is that you see that orange ring that goes around, which is the turret ring of this vehicle. That is pennable, like very easily pennable by basically everything, and you can pen that quite nicely. And also the upper plate is actually pennable as well. You can pen through the upper plate of this vehicle above where that kind of armor from the bucket is actually about. So I don't know if we've got an easier way of viewing it, but you see on the front we have those kind of weird triangular areas. You can pen those really easily. You also have the kind of I guess not the blue area, but the sides either side of that, which is just a pain on Wargaming's viewer, but it is the yellow portions that we should be able to see somewhere here, but it doesn't appear like they want to add them. But anyway, basically, if you shoot in the orange area or below, you have a chance at actually penning this thing from the front. And if you can't see the cupola, that is, or it's just a difficult shot to hit the cupola, then you can go for those areas. And of course, as soon as it angles, you can go straight through the side of this thing, aiming hopefully towards the rear of the tank where you have basically less armor. You can see here it has like no armor on the engine deck, 25mm, which means basically any tank is going to pen it in the side. If you're aiming for there, try and aim above where the tracks are. So if you're seeing it has like a raised engine, and this is often a common weak point of basically all of the American tanks. I know this is a German tank, but it is an American tank. It's the M48 pattern basically, or a variant of the M48 pattern, shall we say. You know, it's a made-up tank at the end of the day, but it's based off of that vehicle. And of course, all of the American tanks have that, including the E5 and stuff like that. They all have raised engine decks, the E4, etc., and you can pen them quite easily, even from the front. So if you see this sort of angle, you can actually go for that engine deck at the back, where you can pen it. So you see here, you can see if we try and highlight it somewhere, wherever it might be, you can see there, we can see the engine, the back of it. So if it's angling like this, you can pen the back of it. And that's if you can't just go straight through the side of it. You can aim for that as a little bit of a weak point for those of you wondering. But let's actually have a look at how we've set this tank up, because how are we making it work? Well, we have gone with the gun stabilizers for improved accuracy. We want to make sure that 360 alpha damage is actually hitting and hitting consistently. We have then gone with advanced loader to boost up the DPM, as we always do, and then advanced optics. This is my common build when we're playing basically heavy tanks and tanks that have kind of bigger alpha damage guns. Even on mediums, we'll run this sort of setup because it is just very powerful. It gives you an all-round advantage for most things. Now, in terms of this tank, what you could swap out is, because it is fairly slow, maybe you want to go with advanced power terrain for the increased horsepower and the max speed, because you need the horsepower to kind of get moving, get forward faster and accelerate faster, because it can be a pain. Or you could go with traction system for improved top speed, but not having that engine power is gonna mean that you're not really gonna be able to get up to that top speed, even if it's boosted, because that is the issue with the base tank, is that although it's 35 kilometers an hour, it's quite slow to get up there and feels a little bit sluggish in the game. But this one actually has a bit of armor, which kind of makes the loss of speed over some of the other mediums and kind of heavies in the tier kind of worth it. And like we said, it is fairly powerful. But yeah, I'm very interested in playing this tank. Let's jump into the gameplay, where we can look at what we actually managed to do and why I've actually found this to be a little bit of a sleeper and kind of fun to play. Now then, the first game that we do have is on one of my least favourite maps in the game, Overlord. Primarily because I find this map is quite boring. There's not a lot of kind of flexibility if you're playing anything other than maybe a light tank and a medium tank, and it is just generically the exact same sort of thing that happens every single time you play, and that is that either a team goes on the beach and then all gets taken out, and then the other team win because all of the enemy team went on the beach for some reason, or you have the fact that everyone's camping in the back and then the whole team gain the upper hand on kind of the kind of mid to late game, and then you just end up getting just pounded from all directions, which trust me is not actually fun, and then you just end up basically losing. But this game is one of those scenarios, one of the like 3 different scenarios. Either you're on the winning team that those 2 things happen with, or you're on the losing team where one of those 2 things happens. And although that can be said for a lot of games in World of Tanks console, this map is especially bad because typically the exact same thing happens, whereby you'll either win kind of the beach area, and then in the mid and late game it's actually kind of worth going on the beach, but it's mainly not because you went in the beach at the beginning of the game. It's usually that you realise that the enemy team are kind of holding up your team on the other side of the map, and then you go on the beach after you've kind of pumped their team who initially went on the beach from the middle of the map, and you're kind of looking down onto them. I will never go beach on this map just because it's a really big risk and it doesn't ever really pay off most of the time. So that's kind of my opinion on going on the beach. For some reason loads of people do it, and I genuinely to this day, after playing countless hundreds of days on World of Tanks console, still have no idea why people do it, as it just basically gets you taken out way quicker. But you know, maybe you could enlighten me as to the meta of the beach at the beginning of the game, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you guys think or why it works, supposedly. But either way, we picked up 1,100 damage, and this game and both of these games are interesting ones because they are not these outrageous games like you're used to seeing on World of Tanks. And they're actually games that I'm trying to introduce into the videos, in that I want to pick a game where not only do I do a okay amount of damage, for the most part, but also a game that's interesting because we're not just, you know, steamrolling and I'm just farming damage at the back. Games where it's a little bit slower, where you have opportunities that don't really end up working, or you miss out on stuff, or maybe I make a misplay so I can highlight it to you guys as to what went wrong, or stuff like that, where I can be super critical of both my own gameplay. Now, number one, missing shots like that. That was a crucial one on the light tank, because it may or may not come back to bite me on the backside, quite literally. But anyway, the enemy team are moving up. The biggest threat for me right now, given that the SU-130PM has heat rounds that will go straight through my turret, we need to get rid of this guy. So hopefully he fires on the move, and there you go, he does, which gives us time to get one into him. But of course, we still need multiple shots to remove him. Now, as you can see, our team on the beach are doing a fantastic job of fighting absolutely no one except the people who are on top, farming them without exposing any of their tank. And just like I said, the light tank is coming back to bite me, and then oh my god, what am I doing? I'm missing shots left, right and center, and this is essentially a case of yeah, just making sure to fully aim. We're expecting the light tank to come through. I don't know why I shot there. There was literally a building in the way. Just a nightmare. We really needed to remove this guy, because now we have got two tanks rolling up on our right, and looks like they've won one flank, and we're still on the beach doing nothing against no one, and there's 5 tanks there whilst the rest of the team get pounded. There's a surprise. It's like I already knew that this typically happens when you all go on the beach. I wonder why. Anyway, the Chimera comes over thinking he's funny, and if you watch yesterday's video where we looked at the Chimera, you understand how powerful that tank is. But it has a long reload and doesn't have the best DPM. But oh, for God's sake, the AMBT comes around. We managed to finish him off. We're angling for the VK 4502A, and of course the SU-130PM, because that's quite dangerous. But it's not looking good. We've got a Chimera, an SU, a VK in front. We're trying to use the MBT's wreck as a way to avoid the Chimera's shell, which we do, but we take a VKA hit, and oh, it's just not ideal. We've got 3 tanks around us. We're in a sausage, or a triple sausage sandwich from all 3 directions. We land one in the SU, but we low roll by 28, leaving him alive. He somehow misses, which gives me an like a momentary potential of being able to get one more out, but we don't manage to do it, and the VKP on their team manages to finish me off, whilst our team have finally taken out the 1 tank destroyer holding up the entire flank, but with the 5 of them there. So with the 5 of them there, I'm hoping that most of these tanks are left on a reduced amount of hit points, so we should be able to win it, because you know, we have the hit point advantage, we have the tank advantage, and yeah, it should be able to be won. But let's take a look, because now we have 2 tanks up. We've got a soldier on M67 firing his flamethrower from a distance that can't actually hit anyone and deal damage, and continuing to move forward. Not quite sure why, but yeah. Either way, we'll skip forward. There's no point in watching it. Let's actually have a look at the result, what happened. Yeah, didn't end up all too well, with the Tiger 2 throwing it all away at the end against the VK 1001P, and although it was fairly close at the ends with only 128 hit points between it, we did end up losing, with me picking up 3,252 damage, 396 assistance, and still losing, even though blocking at 2,100 damage as well. As I said, the armor actually kind of works on this heavy tank because of the fact of the reasons that we spoke about, where A, they either go for the lower plate, which doesn't exist on this tank, or B, they just can't see the cupola of the vehicle and end up kind of fluffing their shot or missing. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting match, that one, and I'd be interested to see your thoughts on it. Then we have a game on Mountain Pass, and Mountain Pass is an actual decent map with my eyes regarding how it kind of plays. It is a very similar sort of game that you can play on this map, but there's a lot more flexibility that you can do. That, yeah, the results might end up in the same way at the end, but the middle game is actually kind of good because there's a lot of the kind of movement you can do and reacting to different situations, and although they're quite common places where you have to move to, it gives you a little bit of diversity, regardless of what tank class you're playing, which is always good. We are, of course, playing in a tier 8 game. I am not paying attention with auto drive on, and yeah, apparently I come back now. So, yes, I do make mistakes as well. There's a surprise. And of course you can see them live on streams when we usually stream on a Friday. Missed this Friday because I was busy. But of course I'll try as hard as I can to try and do it every Friday, and of course we'll be maybe platooning with some of the channel members as well, so yeah, that could be fun, where we just platoon up for a few games with a variety of channel members that we do have. If you are a channel member, of course that's just by supporting me. It's kind of like a Twitch subscriber, whatever you want to call it. Twitch TV as in the streaming platform, for those of you that might not know. So yeah, if you are a channel member, then yeah, we'll be kind of doing some live sessions and inviting people in, because it could be interesting. Maybe we can see how everyone's playing and that sort of stuff. So at this side, we have to push aside. The enemy team are taking a very aggressive start where they're pushing through the bridge and going to end up encircling around us. So we need to move. There's a 45 TP who we need to get rid of here on this flank. We managed to get very lucky hitting him there, and of course, in typical wargaming fashion, high roll him as well. But the first round that we did fire did low roll, so I guess it's a bit of a give and take, and usually it's wargaming giveth and wargaming taketh back much worse. But there you go, they've taken it back with the 40 damage low roll. So yeah, I can go and shove that one up my pipe. But we have done 951 damage. We've not taken a single hit, as you can expect when you're fighting lower tier vehicles in this one. But we are now going to come up from behind of the Dragon to create our own sausage sandwich. We were in a sausage sandwich last game, but this one is not going to be that. So Dragon, please give me some damage. We managed to hit him. Now this is kind of not ideal because he can see my lower plate from here, and that's because he's angling up into my lower plate, and of course the track does not actually cover that, and you saw there he hit me in the lower plate, dealing a decent amount of damage, which is why I now push forward so that we are more of an incline angling down, such that he doesn't get that angle up into the bottom of our vehicle. But there is now a Progetto coming from behind, and there is also some people in the middle who are going to start pushing over the bridge potentially. Now I was thinking about going down, but this Progetto could be a bit of a pain in the backside, and oh yes, there are now 3 tanks and a Skoda who's pushed up, who we go for with that shot, which is nice. He gets taken out by our Barask, and then now we have to try and deal with these heavy tanks, and given that I'm on 1,000 hit points, I'm hoping we can make it work. Now the medium tank is trying to run away, which is never a good idea at this point in the game, especially with so many vehicles on the enemy team being there. We might have been able to help him, and he might have been able to help us, but this is not good. There is a Italian auto-reloading heavy tank about to come around my backside, so let's angle for him, because the King Tiger, although having good damage per minute, is not going to be able to outclip me. But maybe I should have gone for the King Tiger, as this Progetto doesn't seem to know what day of the week it is. But you can see here the situation's pretty dire. and we end up losing. But I think it kind of shows you how powerful this tank is in the right matchup, and if you have a little bit of team support. And that is the crucial thing, because this game highlights you need team support when you're playing in this vehicle, because the damage per minute is not great. You don't have that pack-a-punch. You have the armor to bounce a few rounds, but you can't realistically do it all too well, and so you can end up losing a lot of those hit points pretty quickly as soon as they get around the side of you. And yeah, you're not the fastest to outmaneuver your opponents either. So yeah, the tank overall, I actually quite like it. It's a novel one. It's definitely an underdog. It's not the best you can pick, but I wanted to cover it because sometimes playing World of Tanks isn't always about picking the most meta, overpowered, broken tank you can, because sometimes they're just not fun to play. So this one gets a seal of approval for enjoyment and kind of something a little bit different to the usual kind of bog standard vehicle, having the big thick lower plate and the weird Minotaur on the front of it. But of course, let me know what you guys think of the Asterion, and of course let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the games, and yeah, let me know what sort of if you're currently serving and whether my interpretation of the armor and stuff like that is actually right, because I might be completely wrong and you guys might be better suited to answering that. But other than that, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you're having a brilliant day, and I will see you in the next video. Hopefully. See you there. Goodbye.